Bojo Nikanik, Ani Jayek. Welcome to Indigenous Author Monday with Gazaudasot. That's me. Today is part 2 of Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. She is also Citizen Band Potawatomi as me, so she's a relative. And reading this book, I can't tell you how much joy it has brought me, but at the same time it's helping me work out through some historical trauma that I didn't realize was there. And as Indigenous people, I think we can all relate and have that Indigenous historical trauma, whether we realize it's there or not. And reading this book has just kind of brought it to the forefront so I can deal with it. We're not going to make it all go away, no, but at least we can deal with it and talk about it. So please talk about whatever you want to in the comments. Let's talk about the book. Let's talk about where you're from. I really want to know what you think about this book, though. Hopefully you've had enough time to get it so we can read it together. So let's go ahead and check it out. This is part 2, so get comfortable, get in your favorite chair, get your book, get your reading glasses, and let's go. So last time I just did the preface for you, and that was incredibly beautiful. Today, we're starting on, I'm going to do a reading from page 5. Now, for a little bit of background, she talks about Sky Woman. Now, Sky Woman is a story that Anishinaabe talk about, and I think most Indigenous tribes have a story about Sky Woman. But this is a story we're only supposed to speak about or talk about when it's in the winter time. I know it's winter time now, so I can talk about it, but since I'm putting it out there on social media and YouTube, I don't want to tell the story of Sky Woman. So if you don't know the story of Sky Woman, and you don't have this book, just Google Anishinaabe Sky Woman, and then try to go to like a .edu or a .org, or a site that goes to a legit Native American site, and you can read about Sky Woman on your own without me having to put it on social media. But if you get this book, it's going to tell you about Sky Woman anyway. So the reading I'm going to do is about Sky Woman and more about Wingashk, which is sweetgrass. Okay, so get comfortable. Our stories say that of all the plants, Wingashk or sweetgrass was the very first to grow on the earth. Its fragrance a sweet memory of Sky Woman's hand. Accordingly, it is honored as one of the 4 sacred plants of my people. Breathe in its scent and you start to remember things you didn't know you had forgotten. Our elders say that ceremonies are the way we remember to remember, and so sweetgrass is a powerful ceremony plant, cherished by many Indigenous nations. It is also used to make beautiful baskets, both medicine and a relative. Its value is both material and spiritual. There is such tenderness in braiding the hair of someone you love. Kindness and something more flow between the braider and the braided, the two connected by the cord of the plait. Wingashk waves in strands, long and shining like a woman's freshly washed hair. And so we say it is the flowing hair of Mother Earth. When we braid sweetgrass, we are braiding the hair of Mother Earth, showing her our loving attention, our care for her beauty and well-being, in gratitude for all she has given us. Children hearing the Sky Woman story from birth know in their bones the responsibility that flows between humans and the earth. The story of Sky Woman's journey is so rich and glittering it feels to me like a deep bowl of celestial blue from which I could drink again and again. It holds our beliefs, our history, our relationships, Looking into that starry bowl, I see images swirling so fluidly that the past and the present become as one. Images of Sky Woman speak not just of where we came from, but also of how we can go forward. You see what I mean? This goes deep. This goes really deep, and it talks about our relationship not just with Sky Woman and Wingosh, the Sweetgrass. It talks about our relationship with each other, with our Nokmis, our grandmother, and with our children. It talks about that chain of braiding each other's hair. And we not only braid, the females in our group, but also the men also can share in this with us. Sweetgrass Wingosh is normally known as like a female medicine. Females are usually the ones to go and gather sweetgrass and cedar. But knowing this, in braiding, we can bring men into the conversation as well. It's not just a female medicine or relative, it's a human relative. And so this goes into so many different levels, and I'd really like to know what you think about that passage. Okay. Now this next part, it talks about, it brings Christianity into the mix, because there wasn't Christianity before the settlers came, let's get real. Part of me decolonizing myself and working through this historical trauma is also coming to grips with what Christianity is in my life, in my family's life, my past as well as my future. I feel often like I'm walking in two different worlds between Christianity and my Anishinaabe, because we were so afraid of our Anishinaabe spirituality growing up, we didn't talk about it. It was okay to talk about Christianity, of course, with friends and out in public, but we never talked about our Anishinaabe beliefs or culture because we were so afraid. Okay, moving on. I'm going to do a reading that's from 6 and 7, and then we'll move on. We'll probably finish on page 14 or 15. I don't know. Let's go. Okay. Are you comfortable? Make sure you're comfortable. On one side of the world were people whose relationship with the living world was shaped by Sky Woman, who created a garden for the well-being of all. On the other side was another woman with a garden and a tree, but for its lasting fruit she was banished from the garden, and the gates clanged shut behind her. That mother of men was made to wander in the wilderness and earn her bread by the sweat of her brow, not by filling her mouth with the sweet, juicy fruits that bend the branches low. In order to eat, she was instructed to subdue the wilderness into which she was cast. Same species, same earth, different stories. Like creation stories everywhere, cosmologies are a source of identity and orientation to the world. They tell us who we are. We are inevitably shaped by them, no matter how distant they may be from our consciousness. One story leads to the generous embrace of the living world, the other to banishment. One woman is our ancestral gardener, a co-creator of the good green world that would be the home of her descendants. The other was an exile, just passing through an alien world on a rough road to her real home in heaven. And then they met, the offspring of Sky Woman and the children of Eve. And the land around us bears the scars of that meeting, the echoes of our stories. They say that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and I can only imagine the conversation between Eve and Sky Woman. Sister, you got the short end of the stick. The Sky Woman story, shared by the original peoples throughout the Great Lakes, is a constant star in the constellation of teachings we call the original instructions. These are not instructions like commandments, though, or rules. Rather, they are like a compass. They provide an orientation, but not a map. The work of living is creating that map for yourself. How to follow the original instructions will be different for each of us and different for every era. Oh my goodness. I get goosebumps when I read that. Goosebumps, I tell you. So I want to know what you think about that too. If you need to pause and write down notes. I've got notes all over my book, in the book. So if you need to pause, feel free to pause. I'm going to start another reading here on page 9. We can't read it all because you need to buy the book. So if you haven't bought the book yet, please buy it. You can get it on Amazon or you can get it at milkweed.org, just Braiding Sweetgrass. Okay, moving on, page 9. Look at the legacy of poor Eve's exile from Eden. The land shows the bruises of an abusive relationship. It's not just land that is broken, but more importantly, our relationship to land. As Gary Nabhan has written, we can't meaningfully process the healing with restoration without restoration. In other words, our relationship with land cannot heal until we hear its stories. But who will tell them? In the Western tradition, there is a recognized hierarchy of beings, with of course the human being on top, the pinnacle of evolution, the darling of creation, and the plants at the bottom. But in native ways of knowing, human people are often referred to as the younger brother of creation. We say that humans have the least experience with how to live and thus the most to learn. We must look to our teachers among the other species for guidance. Their wisdom is apparent in the way they live. They teach us by example. They've been on the earth far longer than we have been and have had time to figure things out. They live both above and below ground, joining to the earth. Plants know how to make food and medicine from light and water, and then they give it away. I like to imagine that when Sky Woman scattered her handful of seeds across Turtle Island, she was sowing sustenance for the body and also for the mind, emotion, and spirit. She was leaving us teachers. The plants can tell us her story. We just need to learn to listen. I think that's a good place to end. Don't you? That was really deep. I think we should end there. Get my place marker. Because that was really deep. It talked about the differences between Eve and Sky Woman, but also the similarities, the mothers of men and women, but then also the relationship of humans and the rest of our relatives on the planet, the plants and the animals below ground and above ground in the sky, and how we need to listen to their stories. We need to listen to our elders. We need to go back home, wherever that may be. So I really want to know what you think about that. I mean, I get goosebumps, and every time I read that, I smudge first. If I get emotional, I'll stop and I'll smudge again. I like to have both cedar and sweetgrass and sage and some sema, just so I'm in the right state of mind. Get comfortable. Try to make sure there's no distractions. My son is in music class right now via Zoom, so that's always fun. But try to have a notebook available too so you can write down notes. I'd really like to know what you think, so please leave comments. I am on TikTok and I'm on Instagram and Facebook, so you can always contact me that way if you want to discuss anything further. But I think that's it for today. I think that was pretty deep. I don't know. I don't want to go too much farther. Next time, I can tell already it's going to be an emotional ride for me, and probably for many of my Indigenous relatives too. We are going to be going into some of the what happened during the removal. For those of you that aren't Anishinaabe or aren't Indigenous, there was more than one removal trail. People always hear about the Trail of Tears, but you don't hear about all the other trails. For my people, it was the Trail of Death. We were removed from our homeland in Upper Michigan and Indiana and forced to march into Kansas. We were known as the Duck People because we knew all of the waterways and we lived off of the water. So to be moved from the Great Lakes area and know all the waterways to flat Kansas, and we didn't know the plants there, and a lot of our relatives died. In fact, my 3 times great grandmother, I haven't been able to get as much information as I'd like to, but she either died on the trail or shortly after arriving in Kansas. But she had a daughter that died on the trail. So I have an auntie and who knows who else. So next Monday, it's going to be a little bit emotional. So make sure you smudge. Make sure we're in the right state of mind. If we cry, we cry. Whatever. It's a safe place, right? So come next week, bring your notes, your book. If you don't have the book yet, get it, Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. You can get it on Amazon or through milkweed.org. Okay, that was wonderful and beautiful. Thank you for coming. Chimigwech. Bamapi. For every Indigenous Author Monday video that I put out, I am dedicating it to the One Shelf Project put on by Gadakana. Gadakana is an Indigenous organization, a 501c3 nonprofit, tax-deductible organization that provides books in their local libraries that are actually accurate, historically accurate, and by Indigenous authors, both fiction and nonfiction. And their goal is to at least have a shelf dedicated to Indigenous accurate information in their local libraries. They can only do this with help through donors, and they need your help. I will put the link down here, so please check them out. The One Shelf Project, another organization near and dear to my heart. Gadakana.